One of the themes I cover in my book, The Capitalist Manifesto, is the future of China. In recent years, the most popular narrative about China has gone something like this. China has robbed us of our jobs and technologies and is on its way to take over the whole global economy with its impressive planning, industrial policy, and protectionism. And the conclusion is that we have to stop being naive, and instead we have to imitate China in order to beat it with our own industrial policy, tariffs, and subsidies. This is a terrible idea, because these are not the policies that has made China rich. It's what risks making it poor. And it's based on a complete misunderstanding of how China got out of extreme poverty. As documented by economists like Ning Wang and Ronald Coase, it was not top-down decisions that started the growth process in China. It was a series of popular revolts in the late 1970s and onwards that got it going. Hungry farmers began to dismantle collective agriculture and secretly privatized land. Then this increased agricultural productivity to the extent that they could build entrepreneurial village economies. Then the young in cities demanded the right to start similar businesses and soon manufacturing companies. The genius of China's ruler Deng Xiaoping was not in conceiving of this, much less planning it, but in accepting it when he saw the amazing results. Then he allowed these market forces to emerge, first in special zones, but eventually in the whole economy. This is what abolished extreme poverty in China, a process that was mostly finished by 2010. Only after 2010 did we see the large-scale return of authoritarianism and the planned economy, especially under Xi Jinping. One reason was that the Communist Party feared that economic growth had unleashed forces that it could not control. Xi put the state back into the economy, and now for the first time since Mao, they got detailed 5-year plans, an ambitious industrial policy. He attacked successful tech companies and started an erratic and brutal zero-COVID policy. This centralization is not something to envy. It's what makes China weak. Subsidies reduce productivity, and the debt incurred by massive stimulus packages and bailouts look increasingly unsustainable. Growth has repeatedly disappointed as entrepreneurs fear investing and consumers fear consuming. In some areas, things are now so bad that Chinese authorities have stopped publishing the data. Furthermore, this comes at a risky moment for China, a moment when catch-up growth is over for other reasons. The Chinese population is declining, so there are few more farmers that can be put into factories or into newly built apartments. The low-hanging fruit has been picked, so from now on, growth has to come from elsewhere, innovative companies, from eccentrics in garages, from surprising places. And unfortunately for China, these are exactly the things that dictators fear the most. Why is this important? Because it means that the things that makes China seem scary, increasing authoritarianism, planning and control, is what stops it from taking over the world. Now it seems like China might never become the biggest economy on the planet, something everybody expected just a few years ago. So we shouldn't become China. China should become us if it wants a prosperous future. This also has important implication for how the West deals with China. Some think this is the time to turn the screws on China, intensify the trade war and decouple big time. But China is already in decline, and I think it's important that this is a managed decline. If we added to China's troubles by trying to break its economy, would that make the world a safer place? In that case, how would the Communist Party react? A party that has built its legitimacy not on ideology, but on raising living standards. The risk is that it would become even more nationalist and aggressive, especially if it started to seem like China's trouble was the consequence of Western action and not the inevitable outcome of Xi Jinping's ill-advised policies. If the Communist Party felt like power was slipping away, it might even gamble on invading Taiwan, especially if it has already lost the foreign investments and the trade relationships that it would otherwise fear losing by starting such a war. It usually makes for a better, safer planet if major powers think that they all have a possible, prosperous future in that world. And we in the West would also lose by rejecting trade with China. It would hurt our jobs, our wallets, and our productivity. And the ones who would suffer most directly from higher tariffs on Chinese goods would be the ones who can least afford it, low and middle-income households. But what's the use of lower prices if it comes at the price of American jobs lost to Chinese imports, some say? That is a factor, but a widely exaggerated one. For every US job that was lost to Chinese imports, 150 US jobs were lost to entirely unrelated causes. For some reason, we don't obsess over those 150 jobs as much as we do over this one job. Dynamic economies always lose jobs and always create new ones. The question is, how do we create new and better jobs all the time? The answer might surprise you. One way of doing it is by having trade with China. Recent surveys show that companies that are exposed to Chinese imports expand their workforce by 2% more annually than other businesses do. Those jobs are also higher paying manufacturing jobs because they now specialize in areas where they add more value, and in complementary service jobs, and in research and design, engineering, marketing, and so on. If China has taken our jobs, it has given us better jobs in return. Just look at an iPhone. Yes, they're often assembled in China, and that's why Donald Trump said that, look, China is the biggest beneficiary of Apple, not us. Really? A team of researchers picked an iPhone 7 apart to find out if this is true, and they realized that almost all the value was captured by Western producers of components and by American researchers, designers, programmers, salespeople, warehouse workers, marketers, retailers, and tax authorities. How much did the biggest beneficiary get of the price you pay for an iPhone? Just 1.3%. Of course, we could bring such assembly works back home, but in that case, an iPhone would be very expensive and many consumers would turn to competitors, including Chinese competitors. And Apple would certainly not have been able to sell the 400 million iPhones it has sold to Chinese buyers. And in that case, Western economies would have lost the 98.7% on each item sold. Ironically, this is why the Chinese are trying to automate and offshore many assembly jobs to climb the value ladder. Even they realize that low productive manufacturing job is not the key to prosperity. The conclusion is simple. If we want to stay on top, we have to stay open to the ideas, the talent, the hard work of the rest of the world, including China. Do you know why America has 65% of the world's elite AI researchers? Because America has been open to the best AI researchers. More than 2/3 of them are foreign. 1/4 of them are Chinese. Just as Deng Xiaoping once realized that the only way for the Chinese to prosper was by ideas from and exchange with the West, we have to realize that the only way to outperform China is to enlist as many Chinese in that struggle as possible.